Robert Trump passes away and the left shows their true colors about all of it. The U.S. Postal Service becomes the center of a major debate coming up into the election. An FBI lawyer gets arrested in the Durham probe and pleads guilty to charges brought against him, and Antifa heads on into Sturgis. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, folks, and welcome to Contemporary. We have got a major, busy news day this morning over on Monday morning, and we've got an even busier week to catch up on coming up later on the Red Ned Show later on tonight. So make sure you come on in and check that out later on at 5:30 Central Time with my wonderful co-host Elaine. We've got a ton to get to, and I've got even a little bit more to add to it here after we get done with this show. But before we get started on either show, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We've got the generational gap. We've got Stephen Ignoramus. We've got the breakdown with Birkenhoff. We've got the Freckles and Brit show. I've got my start menu popping back up here. We've also got the Already Conservative. So come on over, check us out, pick up some of our swag, and come and help us support great creators. Alright, let's move on over in here and check out what the stocks looked like last week. Looks like we had just a little bit of an upswing. Throughout the day, it went down, it went up. It was a roller coaster day over on the stock market on Friday, so we're not sure where this is going to land here, but we're going to keep watching this as we come along. We've got some mixed reviews on this, and in a rare stock market session, I actually have 3 stock market stories to share with you guys here. So let's head on into that and see what the investors have to say. First off, from Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones Futures stock market rally sends message. JD earnings top. Tesla gets price target hike. From Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures tilted higher versus fair value early Monday, while S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures rose modestly. Last week, the coronavirus stock market rally showed gains for the major indices, but growth stocks were a mixed picture. Apple stock and Tesla pushed the NASDAQ into positive territory, but software names struggled. More to the point, breakouts and rebounds from 10-week lines in the past few weeks generally haven't worked that well. Some have struggled, while others haven't really gone anywhere. On the other hand, investors holding growth stocks for several months are doing just fine. Amazon, Adobe, ASML, Autodesk, and JD.com have new flat bases. ASML stock, Adobe stock, Autodesk, and JD.com are actionable or potentially actionable from 10-week line rebounds. That's ASML, people, not ASMR. So get your minds out of the gutter on that one there. JD.com earnings topped views early Monday, kicking off a big week for Chinese e-commerce results. Shares rallied, signaling a possible entry. Don't forget about Tesla stock, which was up early Monday. Shares surged last week and are somewhat extended from that move, but Tesla is 5 weeks into a consolidation. If it pauses for another week, especially at its current levels, Tesla stock would have a new base. Adobe, Apple, Amazon, and Tesla are all on IBD leaderboard. Apple stock is also on Swing Trader. Amazon stock, Adobe, ASML, and Autodesk are on the IBD 50, and ASMR is on your Twitch stream. So go and check that out over there, you guys. Alright, let's keep going on here. In the futures, Dow Jones futures were slightly above fair value. S&P 500 futures rose 0.2%. NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.5% versus fair value. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So far, the lack of new coronavirus stimulus deal hasn't appeared to affect the stock market rally. But with the Senate in recess through Labor Day, the government doesn't seem in a rush to support the nascent economic recovery. Yeah, the government doesn't give a fuck about you. And even IBD is going to come out and say that. And you guys all know that. You guys are smart. Alright. Let's keep going. From the Wall Street Journal, I wanted to read this one here on the futures. S&P 500 futures show benchmark shuffling to record high. From Joe Wallace. This is archived because Wall Street Journal doesn't let you read their articles without putting your ad blocker off. And I ain't doing that. U.S. stock futures ticked higher Monday, signaling that the S&P 500 may edge toward a record high amid lackluster trading during the summer vacation period. Futures tied to the S&P 500 ticked up 0.3%, pointing to tepid gains after the opening bell. The broad index has risen for 3 consecutive weeks and ended Friday's a hair's breadth below its record closing high from February, shortly before the pandemic ravaged financial markets. A burst upward by the so-called cyclical stocks in the energy and financial sectors, which are sensitive to investors' perception of the U.S. economy, has powered the latest leg of the market's recovery from its March lows. Still, the pace of advance has slowed in recent weeks as investors take stock of hurdles facing the economic recovery. Stalled negotiations over a new stimulus package in Washington and tensions with China. We had this vibe that the bottom of the economic slump wasn't quite as bad as people's baseline forecast, said Lynn Graham Taylor, senior rate strategist at Rabobank. But there's also a feeling right now that the recovery is not going to be a quick V shape. It's going to be slower. Dude, we're already there. I don't know what you are coming out and saying with it's not going to be a V shape. We're there. We're talking about getting back to records. Yeah, it was along on one leg of the V, but we're there, guys. Just about. So, let's keep going here. Exceptionally thin holiday trading has also contributed to listless moves in stocks and bond yields, according to Mr. Graham Taylor. It will get busy in a few weeks or so, he added, citing the U.S. presidential election as one factor that will drive markets during the fall. Just 3.2 billion shares changed hands on the New York Stock Exchange on Friday, the lowest number since New Year's Eve last year. So far this month, daily trading volumes on the exchange have been more than a fifth below the average for 2020 as a whole, according to the Dow market data. Before the opening bell in New York, shares in Principia Biopharma jumped 10%. French pharmaceutical company Sanofi agreed to buy Principia in a deal that values the developer of a multiple sclerosis treatment at $3.68 billion. Hey, they are coming out and looking at other diseases. It's not just COVID 100% of the time. So, hey, that's a good deal anyway. Bond and currency markets were also quiet. The yield on 10-year Treasury notes ticked down to 0.696% from a 0.708% Friday. The Wall Street Dollar Index, which tracks the dollar against a basket of other currencies, slipped 0.1%. Hey, if you can imagine one thing that I would not put my money into right now, this very minute, and it's usually a safe investment, but right now, you can imagine I wouldn't put it into, it would be a bond. I would not be putting anything into the fucking U.S. government for any reason at this point. All right. So, that's what we have going on over there. Let's keep moving along here. I've got one from CNN that I just wanted to point out to you guys. And it was something that's kind of counter to the narrative of everything that we're seeing with stocks going up and people's retirements being refilled from this. So I wanted to make sure that we looked at this one here before the bell from Paul R. LaMonica over at CNN Business. How long can this greed-fueled rally last? From CNN Business, is the stock's rally turning into a bubble? Consider the evidence. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ are not far from record highs. The VIX Volatility Index has plunged in the past month. There's also been a crazy run this summer in speculative stocks like Kodak, which is apparently a drug company now, and bankrupt companies such as Hertz. Then there's the surge in demand for many unprofitable initial public offerings and special purpose acquisition corporations like DraftKings and Nikola going public through blank check mergers. And the CNN Business Fear and Greed Index, which measures the 7 indicators of investor sentiment, is not far from extreme greed levels. The Wall Street euphoria suggests that this could be another bubble of market mania. This doesn't tend to end well. So is this rally running on fumes? There are growing concerns about the fact that stocks have continued to head higher even as the global economy remains mired in recession. The job market in the U.S. is far from pre-pandemic levels, even though there are some gradual signs of improvement. The UK's economic slump is particularly painful, and J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said in a recent interview with CNN's Christine Romans that the market surge does not reflect the harsh economic reality many people face. That makes it even more critical for the White House and Democratic leaders in Congress to come to an agreement on more stimulus. The U.S. labor market continues to show signs of stabilizing, but referring to it as healing is a bit of a stretch, said Samuel Rhines, chief economist with Avalon Investment and Advisory, in a report. The economic consequences of this level of unemployment has not been fully felt by the economy due to the significant transfer payments from the government, Rhines added. As the surge payments expire, the U.S. economy will begin to feel the pain more acutely. And, honestly, a lot of what we're seeing here is not necessarily the fact that these guys are coming in and these states or the economy is staying mired. Red states during the coronavirus pandemic have remained in a boom. Some of them are even still hiring right now. I get notes every day, and this is far from a red state, but even in my state where we balked against the governor and got our shutdown ended, we're hiring in Wisconsin. South Dakota is hiring. The only places that we are seeing right now that are having a stock market drop are places like Michigan, New York, Illinois, California, where they're saying we're going to stay locked down forever. And California is going to be a big hit on this too, because California is one of the biggest states in the union, and it has a lot of economy. Now, of course, excuse me, I got a little bit of the COVID cough there. Now, of course, looking at California, you do have to remember the fact that it could be an economy on itself. It's on its own. On its own, it's the seventh largest economy in the world, but it's also one of those that has borrowed massive amounts of money against the federal government as well. So it's running on a bubble in and of itself, and Garcetti and Newsom are both trying to run that state into the ground because it makes the evil orange man look bad. But it would be a disaster beyond all kinds of disaster for them right now to see Trump win the popular vote. And California could definitely help in that as well. So we're seeing a few things out here. And of course, the people at CNN are trying to remind you that you need to be afraid of what the economy will do. I'm going to throw a mute on here quick and get whatever's in my throat out of here. So hang on just a All right, sorry about that there. That was a big one, and I didn't want to cough that one right in your ears, guys. All right, let's keep going. All right, on the news, and this is top news, that we have reached peak ghoulishness in this country, especially politically. And I'm talking, of course, about the lead CNN article from the day here, Robert Trump, the younger brother of President Donald Trump, dead at age 71, from Caitlin Collins, Megan Vasquez, Kristen Holmes, and Kevin Liptak over at CNN. Robert Trump, 71, the younger brother of President Trump, died Saturday. At a New York hospital, Donald Trump announced in a statement, "It is with a heavy heart that I share that my wonderful brother peacefully passed away tonight. He was not just my brother, he was my best friend. He'll be greatly missed, but we will meet again. His memory will live on in my heart forever. Robert, I love you. Rest in peace," the president said. Donald Trump is expected to attend his brother's funeral. However, no details were immediately available on plans. Additionally, a source familiar with the president personally dictated the White House statement on his brother. "Uncle Robert, we love you. You're in our hearts and prayers always," Ivanka Trump posted on Twitter Saturday night. The president called his brother's hospital room late on Saturday, as it seemed his death was near. Two people familiar with the matter told CNN it's not clear whether they connected or whether Robert Trump's condition allowed him to speak by phone with the president. Several people who spoke to Trump Saturday said he appeared saddened by the impending loss of his brother. Donald Trump made a last-minute decision to go to New York Friday to visit his brother as he headed to New Jersey for the weekend. Robert Trump had been admitted to the New York Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan. Details of Robert Trump's illness have not been released. He had been sick for several months, a person familiar with the knowledge of the matter told CNN. During a White House briefing on Friday, Trump declined to provide reporters with details on his brother's illness. "I have a wonderful brother. We have a great relationship for a long time, from day one, so long time ago, and he's in the hospital right now," Trump said Friday when asked about his brother. "Hopefully he'll be alright, but he's having a hard time." So, and then of course this went on into Robert Trump passing along, and condolences go out with the president, of course, because we are going to be good about this, and had it been President Obama's brother, as much of a disagreement as I had with the man, we would have had condolences out for him as well. But we'll talk about that little piece of ghoulishness in just a second here. So I wanted to move on here and see what the ghoulishness was. First off, from Fox, I got a pair from Fox News here. Hashtag wrong Trump trends on Twitter after death of president's brother from Ron Blitzer. Following the death of President Trump's brother Robert Trump, critics of the president have tweeted the hashtag wrong Trump as if to say it should have been the president to die instead. As of Sunday morning, the hashtag was the second highest trending on Twitter with more than 77,600 tweets, including a journalist and an NAACP leader. Dear Grim Reaper, you took the hashtag wrong Trump, tweeted Bishop Talbert Swan, who is the pastor, radio host, and president of the Springfield, Massachusetts branch of the NAACP. A pastor came out and said, you picked the wrong Trump, and called it out to the Grim Reaper. How sick is that? What he did promise, or what did he promise the devil for the Grim Reaper to take the hashtag wrong Trump, tweeted journalist David Levitt. A number of the posts bearing the hashtag were expressing distaste for the trend, even by some who oppose the president. I dislike Trump with my whole heart, and he will never get my vote, but the hashtag wrong Trump hashtag makes me so uncomfortable as a human being with a heart and compassion for life, said mental health advocate Kenedra Wood. Whoops, we couldn't access this tweet. Robert Trump died Saturday, 11 days before what would have been his 72nd birthday. President Trump had traveled to New York on Friday to visit him. Robert had reportedly spent more than a week in an intensive care unit at Mount Sinai in New York City earlier this summer. So, and we read the details about this as well. And yes, it's horrible to see this. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. The fact that people are coming out and they have so much disdain for this president that they would wish death upon him. And there were people back during the Obama administration that wished death on Obama as well. And you know what happened. You absolutely know what happened. You can't deny it. But we disavow those people. We said, you are disgusting, stop talking when we heard these people, because that is a step too far to do to Obama. And yet, the people who were putting this hashtag up, were being praised, fawned over by other members of the Twitterati that were out there and throwing this around. They were getting retweeted with likes. They loved the fact that they were doing this. So that's a stark difference between what we see on political camps at this point. All right, and finally, from Fox News, Ted Cruz, others rip Washington Post over sick Robert Trump obituary headline from Dom Colicchio. The Washington Post should be ashamed of itself over its headline on an obituary for Robert Trump, brother of the president rather. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz wrote on Sunday morning. Just after midnight, Cruz retweeted a screen capture from the Post website, which included the headline reading, Robert Trump, youngest brother of President Trump, who filed a lawsuit against niece, dies at 71. This headline, on obituary no less, is sick, Cruz wrote. WAPO should be ashamed of itself. Robert Trump, R.I.P. The headline still appeared on the Post website after Cruz's tweet. The senator was apparently offended by the newspaper using the obituary headline to highlight a recent Trump family dispute. Benny Johnson, an executive with conservative group Turning Point USA, reminded his Twitter followers that just last October, a Washington Post obituary headline had described the late ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi as an austere religious scholar. Baghdadi died as a result of a U.S.-led military operation right before the COVID hit, if I might remind you guys. I can't believe that was just October. It seems like years ago at this point. But of course, that's because 2020 has been the longest year on history for most of us here. Just weeks before his death, Robert Trump had tried to block the publication of a book by Mary Trump, a niece of both Robert Trump and the president, whose father was their late brother, Fred Trump Jr., who died in 1981. Robert Trump, who died on Saturday in New York at age 71, was retired after years as a top executive with the Trump Organization. He was also involved in numerous charitable cases, including holiday giving and horse rescues. The loss of his brother prompted a statement from President Trump on Saturday night, which we read already here. So yes, even the Washington Post got in on this, and yes, of course, It's time to call Washington Post out for exactly what it is. It's not where democracy dies in darkness. The Washington Post has become where democracy goes to die in darkness. Because that's all that we're seeing out of these people as well. This is absolutely disgusting. I'm sorry. That's just the word for it. It is horrible. It is horrific and disgusting. We deserve better from the news media, to be completely honest. Alright, let's keep going though. I'm going to save some of this for later on tonight, just as some opening. We're not going to go too into depth out of this, but we're going to do some opening off of this. Alright, now I've got some video for you guys. And those of you over on Instagram, you're going to want to head on over to the link that I have up in my description. You're going to have to copy paste it because I haven't figured out how to turn it into a real link. But you're not going to be able to hear the video, but everybody over on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, and Periscope are going to be able to hear that. So head on over there and check that out while I take care of my massive headphone hair. Hold on, I got to stop some autoplay here too. Alright, let's get that stopped here, and let's go ahead and have a listen to what we have here. Apparently Marge Simpson has something to say on the president here.
I usually don't get into politics, but the president's senior advisor, Jenna Ellis, just said Kamala Harris sounds like me. Lisa says she doesn't mean it as a compliment. If that's so, as an ordinary suburban housewife, I'm starting to feel a little disrespected. I teach my children not to name-call Jenna. I was gonna say I'm pissed off, but I'm afraid they bleep it. I usually don't get into
Alright, that's enough of that. So, let me turn your ears off before we have more autoplay pop in here. If I can find my cursor, that is. So, that's what Marge Simpson had to say about this, coming in and talking a little bit more about what's going on in the Kamala Harris. I don't know. I want to go to places like this. I want to go sit back and watch things like The Simpsons, like sports, without getting a political lecture. And they're taking more and more of that away from me, which is why I come out and make my own content. And I carefully curate what it is that I watch, because I don't want a political lecture when I'm going in for entertainment. It's not the time for that. And yet, we're still going to come out and see all of this come out and happen, because everybody in Los Angeles has to come out and make a commentary on some shit. So, that's what we're seeing up off of this here. Let's keep going. From Fox News, Biden-Harris ticket aims to spark enthusiasm at Democratic convention after low-key campaign from Paul Steinhauser. For the past 5 months, President Trump, his campaign, and his allies have mercilessly ridiculed Democratic challenger Joe Biden for hiding in the basement of his home in Wilmington, Delaware. Monday's kickoff to the Democratic National Convention marks Biden's moment to reset the narrative about the energy behind his candidacy. For one, he'll get out of the basement even as the pandemic-afflicted convention will be largely virtual, planning to deliver his nomination address later in the week from a convention center in Delaware. The star-studded lineup will aim to fire up a base that has suffered from enthusiasm deficiency ever since Barack Obama stopped topping the Democratic ticket, with musical guest performances from John Legend and others stacked alongside the addresses by the Obamas, the Clintons, and briefly, AOC. That's still funny. A huge priority has to be making the people who are watching from all around the country are enthusiastic about the national ballot, that they are excited about making their voices heard, and that they feel invested and hopeful, longtime Democratic consultant and communication strategist Linda Tran said. The 4-day affair will also mark the test run for how the unprecedented virtual convention can be conducted before Republicans follow suit the following week. For their part, the GOP is ready to batter Biden and his party for the duration of the convention week, expected to hear echoes of the allegations they piled on the former Veep all season. He's been in the basement for a long time, Trump said in a June interview on Fox News' Hannity as he mocked the presumptive Democratic nominee. Popular conservative radio host and Trump supporter Howie Carr labeled the former vice president Punxsutawney Joe Biden. I like that. That one's good. I didn't read this article before, so that was a surprise to me. I like that one. A reference to the Pennsylvania groundhog, who emerges to much fanfare once a year to predict how long winter will last. While Biden has left his basement studio numerous times since May to hold small-scale campaign events in Delaware because he can't hold large-scale campaign events because nobody wants to go to them, or in neighboring Pennsylvania, it's true that he's run a low-key presidential general election campaign. Yeah, he's trying to make this a referendum on Trump by keeping his mouth shut and letting Trump be the one that talks. That's pretty obvious. He's trying to come back and do the same thing that Trump did to Hillary. Made a referendum on Obama and Hillary. But he's too much in the spotlight at this point. So I don't know how this is going to go and if it's going to work for him. But yeah, this is going to be up. The convention starts in just a little bit here. It's right over there, by the way. That's like an hour east of where I'm sitting right now. So we'll be watching this here and seeing if I have to add some things on to tonight's show. But yeah, this is going to be one to watch, and hopefully we'll have some video for later on in the week and even next Monday as we go along with more the Red Ned Show. So that's what we're seeing up here from this. I don't know if they're going to get any enthusiasm off this, and I'm more curious at this point to see if Kyle Jurek and his little Biden buddies are going to come back and burn Milwaukee to the ground like they promised. That's what I'm most interested to see out of all of this, to see if they actually burn it down. So that's what we're seeing off of this. Let's keep going. From the Daily Wire. No, I don't care about any of that. CNN poll shows Biden dropping, Trump gaining, Biden support among GOP-leaning voters halved. From Eric Quintanar. The race between President Trump and presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden, who will formally accept the Democratic nomination later this week, has seemingly become more competitive, at least according to a CNN poll conducted by the SSRS and released Sunday evening. The poll, which is conducted over cell phones and landlines between August 12th to 15th, shows Biden receiving 50% of the vote and Trump receiving 46% support among registered voters. When this poll was conducted in early June, Biden held a 14-point lead over Trump. Biden's lead shrinks even more when analyzing the response from places that the pollsters identified as battleground states, including Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wisconsin. How many states was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So, man, almost a third of the country at this point. I don't know why they wouldn't have just said a third of the country, but hey, there you go. Across the 15 states expected to help swing the final outcome in the Electoral College, 49% of respondents told pollsters they would vote for the Democratic ticket. Meanwhile, 48% of respondents said they would vote for Trump. The two have nearly identical favorable and unfavorable ratings in battleground states as well. Trump leads the unfavorability rating by 2 points, but they both have a 45% favorability rating. The sample size for the entire poll was 1,108 adults across the country, 89% of whom were registered to vote, with a 3.7% margin of error. According to CNN, the battleground state subset contained 636 adult respondents, 89% of whom were registered to vote, and contained a slightly higher than 5% margin of error. The poll also suggests that the president has cut into the support of Trump-skeptical Republicans and right-leaning voters. When the poll was conducted in June, Biden received support from 8% of voters who lean Republican. He now only has 4% support from voters who lean Republican. So, in the midst of all of that statistics that were there, that mouthful of numbers and everything else here, this is what we have to take away from this and what we have to do to look into this here. What we're seeing right now is the fact that back in June, before any of this, long before Biden announced his running mate, and even before people were presuming it was Kamala, even before she got her facelift, we were sitting back and looking at this, and they were starting to pull out this poll, and the numbers were starting to shift high in favor of Trump. Because he wanted to go out, he wanted to send in the military. He wanted to be the law and order. Now, people like me who are Federalist, libertarians like my co-host Elaine, and the other LP candidates that I hosted over when I still ran Ed's World, are very much not in favor of the law and order thing, but we are not the average Americans. The average Americans who are going to be responding to a poll like this are going to be the ones that carry Trump over. They're going to be the ones that push him up through the rest of this. And they're going to be the ones that are being polled in things like this. So if we're starting to see this cut go into the base that everyone's been saying that Biden's had for the last 2 months, and this happened way back in the beginning of this, we're starting to see the polls shift out. Now, polls are not reflective on anything. Keep in mind the fact that it was 99% chance that Hillary would win in 2016. And here we sit right now off of all of this. But even still, we're looking at a situation where CNN is even saying, well, the polls are starting to look better for Trump than we really want them to, so we have to manufacture another crisis to make sure that nothing looks good for Trump. So that's what we're going to see off of this here. And once again, I'm not in the Trump camp right now. The UAE thing actually pushed me back up to the maybe. It pushed me back up to maybe with the UAE thing, because with the Patriot Act, it was absolutely fucking not. But now I'm back up to maybe. If we can start to see some peace in the Middle East where we can start pulling troops back out, and this Afghanistan, if the Afghanistan deal goes through, I'm going to the polls and voting for Trump. If he pulls the troops out of Afghanistan, to hell with the Patriot Act. We can deal with that in the second term. I will go right to that poll and vote for Trump. So that's what we're seeing up out of this here. And yeah, the polls are swinging hard in his favor. So this is going to be something to watch. We've got ourselves a race here, folks. All right, I want to talk a bit about this post office thing. And I would normally not use Vice because they are not green check certified, but this is what brought all of this up to my attention. And I've got a couple other articles that I want to talk to about this as well. But from Vice, who is no friend of the president, internal USPS documents outline plans to hobble mail sorting. From Aaron Gordon, the USPS proposed removing 20% of letter sorting machines it uses around the country before revising the plan weeks later to closer to 15% of all machines, meaning 502 will be taken out of service, according to documents obtained by Motherboard outlining the agency's plans. USPS workers told Motherboard that this will slow their ability to sort mail. One of the documents also suggests these changes were in the works before Louis DeJoy, a top Trump donor and Republican fundraiser, became Postmaster General, because it was dated May 15th, a month before DeJoy assumed the office, and only 9 days after the Board of Governors announced his selection. The titles of the presentation, as well as language used in the notice to union officials, undermines the Postal Service's narrative that the organization is simply moving equipment around its network to optimize processing. As spokesperson David Partenheimer told Motherboard on Thursday, the May document clearly calls the initiative an equipment reduction. It makes no mention of the machines being moved to other facilities. And the notice to union officials repeatedly uses the same phrase. Multiple sources within the Postal Service told Motherboard they have personally witnessed the machines, which cost millions of dollars, being destroyed or thrown in the dumpster. USPS did not respond to the request for comment. Now, there are a lot of things you have to keep in mind as we're doing this, as we're going along down this and seeing all of this happen here. And that is the fact that first and foremost, the USPS is running at a massive loss, which is why we're having this argument right now. And I'm going to address that a little bit later, the whole funding thing and everything else that's going on with this. But the USPS is running at a massive, major loss. They struck a piss-poor deal with Amazon, which only favored the billionaire. I wonder how everybody who's supporting the USPS right now feels about that. But, of course, Vice is not going to tell them to be angry about that right now. They're only going to tell them to be angry about, well, the mail-in voting. They're going to try and cripple mail-in voting. Here's reality. First and foremost, mail is down because we're not getting letters anymore. We're getting junk mail and bills is all that we're getting in mail. And half the time, we're not even getting fucking bills in the mail. I am paperless on my electric bill, my cell phone bill, my cable bill, my student loans, my truck payment. I am paperless on everything. My insurance. I am paperless on every single piece of, just about every single bill that I pay every month is paperless. The only time that I actually get a paper bill was, at this point, I got one at the end of last month over the fact that I drove on the Pennsylvania Turnpike 2 months ago. and they want their tolls from it, which I actually still need to pay at this point. That's the only real paper bill that I got, but otherwise it's a flyer or a circular with coupons. Junk mail from people that want to change my payment status on my truck because I pay too much in interest. I get a bunch of those. But yeah, for the most part, it's all just junk mail. Things that people are throwing out. We're not doing anything on the mail service anymore. So they don't need that large amount of mail sorting machines, as far as I can tell from everything out of this. We're all doing everything digitally. The internet crippled the post office, and we knew it was coming back in the 90s. So yes, they're going to need to start shutting some of these machines down to save money. They're trying to keep going and get themselves at least closer to the black. I don't think they're ever going to get themselves back into the black, but at least get somewhere closer to the black at this point. So no, the mail is starting to shut down. We don't need the mail service anymore, and we could privatize it at this point. Of course, everyone will cry foul if we ever happen to do so, but it could absolutely be privatized and see if a private company can run the same thing in the black. And if a private company can't run it in the black, I will eat my words right here. I will tell you right here and now on this program. I will eat my words if FedEx and UPS can't step in and run this in the black. I will eat my words. But from everything I've seen, in order to stay afloat, these companies have to come in and run at a profit. And the U.S. Postal Service doesn't. They can run at a loss year after year, and everyone will still call for them to be bailed out. All right, and let's get into some green check verified stuff. CNN, what matters? Nothing matters over on CNN. Internal USPS documents raise questions about effectiveness of sorting machines. Removal order from Paul P. Murphy and Kurt Devine. The potential effectiveness of an order issued Sunday to stop the removal of USPS sorting machines is now in question. Internal USPS planning documents obtained by CNN indicate nearly 95% of the mail sorting machines that have been set for removal during the last few months were already scheduled to be taken out of service by now. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows told CNN's Jake Tapper on State of the Union that the USPS would not remove any more mail sorting machines until after the election. Documents from June obtained by CNN show the USPS plan to remove 502 DBCS delivery barcode sorter machines, or 13.2% of its total inventory, by September 30th. These machines make up the bulk of the USPS mail sort operation. They sort envelope mail, which would include ballots en route to voters. However, nearly 95%, or 475 of these, were scheduled to be removed by the end of July, according to documents. It is unclear how many machines the USPS has actually removed at this point. CNN has reached out to the USPS to confirm if this plan was followed and what the current number of these machines is nationwide. However, union officials across the U.S. have confirmed to CNN that a number of these machines and other mail sorting machines have been removed or are in the process of removal. Meanwhile, CNN has obtained photos from a source with knowledge of the machine's removal showing a disassembled DBCS machine. The majority of the machine is being scrapped. Part of it will remain in use by the USPS. CNN has previously reported that the union officials have said that the destination of each removed machine varies. Some are scrapped entirely, while some are transferred to other facilities. So, there's a few things that are going along with this, and honestly, like I said in the last article, there is no reason to have so many of these machines anymore because nobody's getting mail. Nobody's getting any real mail. For the most part, all the USPS is doing is circulating advertising at this point. Now, yes, with everything that we see going on and the fact that no matter what happens, the left is going to try and force mail-in voting on everybody, and some states are actually getting on board with this. It's their individual right to do so in each state. Yes, I could see waiting until after the election to start scrapping these machines, but in all reality, we don't need these machines anymore. But yes, everything that we're going to see is going to be an attack on the USPS because Trump needs to cheat to win the election. All right, I got a couple more on this topic here. The New York Times has this titled 2020 Election Live Updates, Trump Defends Postmaster as it concerns grow over mail-in ballots. But I don't want to go into this full article here. I want to go into this part right here specifically, though. Trump tries to pin Postal Service funding woes on Democrats as Pelosi eyes emergency action. President Trump on Saturday accused Democrats of refusing to fund the United States Postal Service as he faced intense criticism from Democrats, who say slowdowns in mail delivery, the removal of sorting machines, and other changes are threatening the integrity of the general election. Speaking at a news conference at his golf resort in Bedminster, New Jersey, Mr. Trump also continued to rail against mail-in voting, calling it a catastrophe, but he did not directly say whether he supported the removal of mail sorting machines and other changes made under the leadership of his Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy. That is a blatant false statement right there. This started before Louis DeJoy took office. This started before he was even announced as being the Postmaster General. So this is just the New York Times trying to pin something on the Trump administration that isn't actually there. I don't know what he's doing, Mr. Trump said. I can only tell you he's a very smart man. He'll be a great Postmaster General. Democrats have, in fact, pushed for a total of $10 billion for the Postal Service in talks with Republicans on the COVID-19 response bill. That figure, which would include money to help the election mail, was down from $25 billion plan in a House-passed coronavirus measure. Speaker Pelosi of California and a House Democratic leadership have begun discussing bringing the chamber back early to address the issues with the Postal Service, a move that would cut short the annual summer recess. While the House is not scheduled to return for votes until September 14th, Democratic leaders could call lawmakers back in the next 2 weeks, two people familiar with the talks said on Saturday. And there are a couple things that are going along with this as well. There are a couple things to point out as we look into this. And as we see what's happening with the mail service and everything else that goes along with this. First and foremost, I will find for tomorrow an article confirming this, but I've already seen reports at this point that Trump has said he will sign a single item budget bill to fund the USPS. The fact of the matter is just like everything else that Pelosi's doing right now, she's trying to shove a whole bunch of fucking pork into these bills to try and get her pet projects done on top of the American workers. Just like she did with the omnibus package the last time through and a shutdown, and just like she tried to do with coronavirus relief, which she's going to come back and do again. This woman has not seen a pork proposal that she does not like. And that's part of the reason we're having problems with this. So that's what we're seeing up out of this. And of course, the New York Times, objective as always. Let's keep going here. From Fox 61 out of Hartford, Connecticut. You know what? This is telling me the exact same information that I saw on the first two articles. So we're going to skip this one because we are already running up on time. So let's keep going here. From Mark Meadows. Meadows denies reports that Postal Service machines were decommissioned, from Justine Coleman. And I've got autoplay going here. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows on Sunday denied reports that several U.S. Postal Service letter sorting machines were decommissioned after orders from the Postmaster General. Meadows told CNN State of the Union that reports about hundreds of postal service sorting machines being taken out of service are a political narrative and not based on fact. NBC News reported on Friday that an internal document showed that Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is decommissioning 671 of USPS's letter sorting machines across the U.S. There's no sorting machines that are going offline between now and the election, Meadows said. That's something that my Democrat friends are trying to do to stoke fear out there. That's not happening. Meadows also called on House Democrats to return to D.C. to negotiate Postal Service funding along with enhanced unemployment benefits, stimulus checks, and small business reform, adding that the president will sign that. CNN's Jake Tapper pushed back on the chief of staff, saying, "Are you saying that the sorting machines have not been taken offline or removed?" "I'm saying that sorting machines between now and the election will not be taken offline," Meadows replied, prompting Tapper to ask about the ones that have been taken offline in the past couple months. "Why were these sorting machines taken offline?" Tapper asked. Meadows answered, "Get your producer to share where exactly those sorting machines were taken offline. Let them whisper in your ear, because what I'm telling you is that you're picking up on a narrative that's not based in fact." "A sorting machine to handle 100 million ballots? It's like a gnat on an elephant's back," Meadows added. "It's not going to matter with 8.6 billion pieces of mail going through the Postal Service every year." So, Meadows is coming out and saying, and yes, I do understand the fact that some of these have already been decommissioned. Maybe they broke down. Maybe they weren't needed anymore. Maybe there was not enough volume of mail to justify them. But yes, some of them have. But for the rest of them that are sitting up right now, the Postal Service is expecting an influx of mail, and they're not going to shut any more down until then. But yes, they are scheduled to get a bunch of them shut down after the election. So we'll see what happens here. This is absolutely going to be a fight as we continue going on down the road here. I've got one from the Oregonian that was brought to my attention from Midget B over in the Discord. So head on over into the Discord, which is linked in the descriptions below you on YouTube, Twitch, and DLive. And you can join in and you can help shape the show as well. So go and check that out. But from the Oregonian, state police pull troopers out of Portland protest coverage, return them to regular assignments. From Maxine Bernstein, Oregon State Police on Thursday pulled out the approximately 100 troopers helping to both federal officers and Portland police in responding to nightly protests in the city that have been often ended in confrontations with demonstrators and arrests. State police committed to 2 weeks, and that 2 weeks ended today, said spokesman Captain Timothy R. Fox. We're in a country that's not going to prosecute this criminal behavior, Fox added. It was a pointed reference to Tuesday's announcements by the new Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt that his office won't pursue many of the charges against demonstrators, including disorderly conduct, interfering with a police officer, and even riot in some circumstances. The troopers will return to their regular assignments elsewhere in the Willamette Valley along the coast and in southern and eastern Oregon, where police and staffing is already limited, Fox said. The Oregon police or state police is continually reassessing our resources and the needs of our partner agencies, and at this time we are inclined to move those resources back to the counties, where prosecution of criminal conduct is still a priority, he said. State police were sent to Portland on July 30th under an agreement between Governor Brown and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to try and curtail the clashes throughout the month between federal officers and some protesters outside the Mark O. Hatfield U.S. Courthouse in downtown. Officers fired tear gas and impact munitions at the crowds after some people lobbed commercial fireworks, glass-bottled, paint-filled balloons, and other objects at them over the fortified fence or trying to damage the fence or the building. So this is what we're seeing out of this here. We're coming out and seeing, oh yeah, no, absolutely. You get the federal agents out of there and we'll disperse. The only reason we're being violent right now is because the federal government is stepping in. And they did moves to get the federal government out of there, and guess what? They're still being violent. We're still seeing all of this here. So you give them an inch and they're going to take a mile. And that's what we're going to see out of this, and that's what's going to continue to happen. So, good job. Thank you, Midget B, for this article. Alright, let's talk about the FBI thing that happened over the weekend here. Durham probe ex-FBI lawyer to plead guilty in first criminal case arising from review, sources say, from Brooks Singman and Bill Mears. Former FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith will plead guilty to making a false statement in the first criminal case arising from U.S. Attorney John Durham's review of the investigation into links between Russia and the 2016 Trump campaign, two sources close to the matter tell Fox News. Kleinsmith was referred for potential prosecution by the Justice Department's Inspector General's office, which conducted its own review of the Russia investigation. Specifically, the Inspector General accused Kleinsmith, though not by name, of altering an email about former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page to say that he was not a source for another government agency. Page has said he was a source for the CIA. The DOJ relied on that assertion as it submitted a third and final renewal application in 2017 to eavesdrop on Page under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Kleinsmith is being charged in a federal court on Washington and is expected to plead guilty to one count of making a false statement, his attorney Justin Schur told the Associated Press. Kevin deeply regrets having altered the email. It was never his intent to mislead the court or his colleagues, as he believed the information he relayed was accurate, but Kevin understands what he did was wrong and accepts responsibility, Schur later said in a statement. I wonder if there are actually going to be protests out there to say, "Free Kevin! Free Kleinsmith!" Because it would just demonstrate the complete double standard. They say that Flynn needs to stay in prison forever for lying to the FBI and making a false statement, but I'm willing to bet right now that Kevin Kleinsmith, they're going to want him off the hook as quickly as possible. So that's what we're going to see off of this here. And the news is not covering this. Nobody wants to talk about this here, but it sure happened. I got another one here from The Hill. Mueller deputy Weissman criticizes DOJ for... Yep, there it is. Criticizes DOJ for bringing case against ex-FBI lawyer from Marty Johnson. I only had to go one more article, I guess. Andrew Weissman, who was served as top prosecutor for former special counsel Robert Mueller, criticized the Department of Justice's decision to bring a case against former FBI lawyer. Well, I guess it's kind of one and the same there. Kevin Kleinsmith as part of an investigation into the origins of the Russia probe. Weissman weighed in following reports on Friday that Kleinsmith intends to plead guilty to falsifying a document that was part of the FBI's justification for wiretapping former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page as part of the 2016 investigation into Russian election interference. Question for U.S. Attorney General William Barr: how are former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's confessed lies to the FBI repeatedly to the VP not a crime, but Kleinsmith changing an email, the full version of which he also sent to the DOJ is, Weissman tweeted, referencing the Justice Department's controversial move to withdraw its case against Flynn, who had already pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. Weissman later asserted that there were two systems of justice at play. Questions judge should ask before accepting Kleinsmith's guilty plea: what precisely is the falsity of the statement that Kleinsmith made? What investigation was it material to? He tweeted. The charge against Kleinsmith marks the first criminal case arising from the probe led by U.S. Attorney John Durham. The Justice Department alleges that the former FBI attorney altered an email to say that Page was not a source for the CIA, even though Page had a relationship with the agency. Alright, and there's a big difference between the two of these here. There's a massive difference between what happened with, well, as far as I know. Now, this is all allegation at this point, so I don't know what happened and why Kleinsmith pleaded guilty. But if they railroaded him and they said, well, we're going to go after your kid unless you come and tell us what we want to hear, then I'm going to be the first one up on the bandwagon to say, okay, well, then get that motherfucker out of jail because he doesn't need to be there anymore. If that turns out to be the case, then yes, get that fucker out of jail if they railroaded him like they did with Michael Flynn. Because he admits to this point that he lied because he lied to the FBI about lying to the FBI. Otherwise, they were going to go after his kid for something else, and he would do anything to protect and keep his kid out of prison. So yes, if the situation is the same, then yes, get Kleinsmith out of prison. Get him out of the charge and dismiss it. Get him out of there. Absolutely. But if in fact he did alter the email, and there was no compelling circumstance to go with this other than the fact that he might be held in contempt or perjury, then yes, throw him in. Let him think about it for a couple of years. So that's what we have to say out of it. And yeah, for what they're going to come out and say too, because they're going to say, well, Flynn needs to be in prison forever, but Kleinsmith, he doesn't even... It's a low-level crime, so, 90 days would be enough for me, to be completely honest. But I know that it's a federal crime, so they're going to put at least a year on there. But yeah, let them think about it for at least a year. Alright, that's what I have on that there. So I have a tweet here from Pure Michigan Girl over on Twitter. Great follow, by the way. Now, Michigan's Governor Whitmer says masks will save 66,000 lives, upping the ante from Biden's 40,000. Also bitching for more federal money. And this comes to us because of an article over on WILX News out of Lansing. Governor Whitmer announces Michigan mask aid to counter COVID-19 spread. Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced at a press conference this morning that the state is launching a new program called Michigan Mask Aid with the goal of lowering the spread of coronavirus overall and in the black community in particular. The goal is to get 4 million masks to Michiganders in need. Those who do not have access to masks can get them for free, and 1.5 million produced by Ford will go to low-income schools. The governor's administration has taken other steps to try and negate the disproportionate spread of COVID-19 in the black community. They expanded drive-through and walk-up testing, encouraged local leaders to form their own committees to address the issue, and added implicit bias training as part of the process for medical license renewal. So, there you go. They threw pork in this. And yes, they're coming out and saying, well, we're doing this because we want to see the masks. We want to get everybody access to a mask, and yet they threw pork in there. Right there. We'll get your funding for masks and we'll get you a free mask, but all of our doctors have to take bullshit implicit bias training, which has always been proven to be bullshit. And you can take the same test 5 seconds apart and get two completely different results. So that's what they're spending money on over in Michigan, and trying to tank their economy on top of this. So they have no taxpayer money. So they have to borrow from the federal government. See how this shit works? All right. Just a couple more here, a few more here, and then we will do something that restores my faith in humanity. From the Blaze, NFL won't have live national anthem performances, may bar military and police honor guard from the field. From Aaron Colin, the NFL won't have any live performances of the national anthem before games this season, as it reportedly attempts to limit the number of people with access to the field to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission, according to Front Office Sports. The tradition of having performers sing the national anthem before games has become a source of controversy due to social justice protests. Although the anthem won't be performed live, there will still be recordings of the song played before the game. The NFL could also limit the presence of military and police honor guard on the field. Those groups are often part of the national anthem ceremony at games. While there may be less ceremony surrounding the national anthem in the NFL in 2020, there will be more in the way of social justice protests and signs of support for anti-racism initiatives. There it is. The NFL will also place social justice messages in the end zones during Week 1 instead of the typical team brand imagery, including end racism and it takes all of us. See, every time we talk about the NFL on the show, I say that I'm done with the NFL and I'm not going to watch them again. And they don't have to go any further. They've already alienated 3/4 of their audience. And then they go just a little bit further. They walk a little bit further along the line, to the point where if they clean up their act for the 2021-2022 season, I don't think I'm going to follow them then either. Because I can't deal with this. I don't, just like I said with The Simpsons, I don't want a political lecture while I'm being entertained. I'm looking for ways to go watch the fucking rodeo at this point. Because I don't want to be anywhere near football. And I enjoy the rodeo a hell of a lot more than football, and I don't know why I ever fell away from it. But yeah, I'd rather go watch the rodeo or hockey. I've never been into hockey. But I would rather go and watch hockey at this point. The rodeo is a good one, though. You guys should, if you guys don't watch rodeo, you guys should watch rodeo, definitely. I don't know how to catch it live at this point, but I'm going to start looking into doing some of that and maybe getting a pass for doing so. But yeah, absolutely. Rodeo is greater than football at this point. I can't even do baseball after what the Red Sox did outside. And I do have to replace that flag behind me, by the way, too. Because after they threw that big mural up outside Fenway, I was done. I can't do it anymore. I don't even care. I don't want a social justice lesson while I'm watching sports. That's my time off. And if you guys can't respect that, then you don't need me as a viewer. That's the end of it. And this is going to be a lot worse for sports in the long run. Because there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way as I do at this point. And a lot of people have been hypnotized by televised sports for a long time. I know a lot of my coworkers are absolutely hypnotized by it. Because it gives them something to do. They can sit down and watch, hang out with their buddies, drink a few beers. But now they're getting up. They're realizing that there's no sports on a Sunday. Do you know how much more I can get done on a Sunday without football in the fall? Get leaves raked. Make more salsa. Make more candles. Get prepared for the winter. There's so much more that I could be doing on a Sunday during football. Build this channel. You're gonna lose a lot of viewership and you're not gonna get it back. Hell, during the summer when NASCAR was on, and I was a big NASCAR guy. And Instagram is about to kick out, so take your Instagram if you're still on. Hit the link above you in the profile, and you can finish out the show over on YouTube. So, thanks everybody. No, I was a big NASCAR fan, and I watched every race. Busch Series, Winston Cup, Truck Series. I watched all of them. And then I got pissed off about the social messaging that they were putting out and the fact that they were throwing Toyota in and changing the rules every single season. I said, you know what? I don't have time for this anymore. I don't have time to understand any of what's going on here. So I'm done with it. And I realized how much more I can get done on a Sunday without watching the race. So now I don't go back to racing. And then they did the fucking Bubba Smollett thing. So now I'm really not going back to them. But yeah, that's what they're going to see if they continue to alienate all their fan base. And a lot of it's not going to come back. People go out and play their own sports before they sit and watch televised national sports. People getting $1 million to play a game. Millions of dollars, not just 1 million, millions of dollars. Overpaid people who want to tell us how to feel about police brutality and privilege. Nope. I'm done. All right, from Forbes. Archived, of course, because they're also the same on ad blocking software. The Justice Department says Yale is violating a civil rights law. It may be going for a knockout blow against affirmative action everywhere. From Evan Gerstmann. Like almost all elite universities, Yale has a robust affirmative action program aimed at bringing more African American and I'm not fucking saying that. Latino students. That's not Latinx. No. And that's not even a part of their language. Latino students to its campus. While Yale is private, it receives federal funds and under a law called Title VI, must follow the constitutional limits on affirmative action programs that the Supreme Court has applied to public universities. The Justice Department has sent a letter to Yale accusing it of violating those limits. The Supreme Court has repeatedly held that universities have a compelling interest in recruiting racially diverse classes, but affirmative action plans must be narrowly tailored to achieve that goal. That means several things. First and foremost, universities can't have racial quotas, a predetermined number of seats that go to each racial and ethnic group. They can have diversity goals, and there's a major controversy about whether there's a meaningful distinction between quotas and goals. The Justice Department says that Yale's goals are stealth quotas, as demonstrated by the fact that the percentage of various minority groups admitted has been suspiciously stable. It wrote, Yale's data and other information shows that Yale is racially balancing its admitted class, with the major racial groups remaining remarkably stable for approximately the last decade. The Supreme Court has also held that race, ethnicity cannot be the predominant factor in college admissions. The Justice Department says that race has become a determinative factor at Yale. Yale grants substantial and often determinative preferences based on race to certain racially favored applicants and relatively and significantly disfavors other applicants because of their race. Yeah, you can tell I slept 3 hours last night. I'm starting to get that mush mouth thing going on. Potentially, the most important part of the Justice Department letter is that it objects to the fact that Yale admits that it intends to continue its race-based admissions process for the foreseeable future. 17 years ago, the Supreme Court upheld the University of Michigan Law School's affirmative action plan, but said the court expects that 25 years from now, the use of racial preferences will no longer be necessary to further the interest approved today. No one knows how literally to take that sentence. The Justice Department obviously intends to ask the courts to give it real bite and demand that Yale and other colleges demonstrate that they have a plan to wind down their affirmative action programs over the next several years. While the federal courts are not an elected branch, it seems very likely that the question of whether affirmative action remains a necessary tool for racial equality will be part of the larger debate over the Black Lives Matter movement, school desegregation, voter suppression, defunding the police, reparations, racial voter suppression, and other highly charged racial issues. The courts may prefer not to wade into such highly charged waters. On the other hand, holding that affirmative action has a time limit might be seen by the courts as preferable to endless litigation over near impossible questions like when goals cross the line to quotas or when race consciousness becomes so great as to make race the predominant factor. Now, Forbes is going completely over what was actually happening here, and I got rid of the New York Post article, and I'm kicking myself in the ass over the fact that I got rid of the New York Post article on this. Yale was putting massive entry barriers to Asian and Jewish students while lowering the entry barriers to black students, and they got caught with it. They're not taking the best and brightest. They are doing quotas. And they are making it harder and harder for the best and the brightest to come in by putting artificial limits on the number of students from a certain ethnicity that can get in. And they got caught with it. And that's what Forbes will not talk about. They went through 4 paragraphs to try 60% of the article. Thanks for Archive for putting that up here. 60% of this article to not say that Yale was looking over and passing over Jewish and Asian students because they were getting too many of them. 60% of the article not to say that. And like I say, what if the roles were reversed? What if they were doing it in the other direction? Yes, that would be suppression at a major level, but everybody would be up in arms over that. But because it's Jewish and Asian students, it's okay somehow. So that's what we're seeing up out of this. And I've heard other commentators talk about this, and I mean, it's right to an extent. I don't know, it would take so much to do this, but they are right to an extent when they say that all the college admissions should be as blind as you can possibly get. Now, part of the problem is going to be they're going to see the school name on an application, even if they take the name out, because somebody might have a more ethnic name. If they take the name out completely and just show the school transcripts, you're still going to know where that school was and the predominant demographics that go around with the school. They're going to find a way to discriminate no matter what they do. But as blind as we can get to these applications, to where we can get the best and the brightest into these schools and going on to create business, to create opportunity for people, to give an opportunity for people to have the American dream, and scholarships on top of all of this. Anything that we can do, we should be doing. But yes, they absolutely got busted with this, and Forbes doesn't want to say it. All right, from Newsweek. Sturgis motorcycle rally protester kicks biker as he rides past, from Ewan Palmer. And there's some other videos that go along with this, and I didn't pull any of this, and I haven't read this one yet, but Antifa went to Sturgis. You heard me correctly. Antifa went to Sturgis this weekend, which I got to give it to them. As scrawny and gangly as those little Antifa kids usually are when I see them, they've got some brass ones. If I didn't agree with the message that Sturgis was putting out, I would not be going up there in front of a bunch of biker gang guys and voicing my opinion off of this. I'm brave, but I'm not stupid. These kids have got some brass ones if they're going to come out and do this. If Antifa's going to go and try and move on Sturgis, where people are armed, where people are 3 times their size, in mass gatherings, they got some brass ones here. Let's read what Newsweek has to say. A man has been arrested for allegedly kicking a biker at the Sturgis motorcycle rally in South Dakota over the weekend during a largely peaceful protest. Videos posted on social media appears to show several police officers detaining the suspect while surrounded by a large crowd of bikers taking part in an annual rally. Dude, that kid was getting arrested for his protection, to get him away from the bikers. One clip of the arrest was posted on Twitter with the caption, "Antifa actually showed up to Sturgis today, although it is unclear if the anti-fascist movement were involved in the protest." A second video also appears to show the movement. The suspect kicks out at a biker as he rides past him on his motorbike, which is largely the last point where he had an intact nose. Jody Van De Water, a Sturgis chief of police, said officers were aware of the planned protest against the large rally, which went ahead amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of riders arrived from all over the country to the rally in South Dakota town. Mask wearing was not mandatory, and social distancing did not appear to be enforced in the bars and on the streets, prompting fears that the rally could help spread the virus. Well, the people assessed their own level of risk and decided that they wanted to go and do this. It was tradition. Yeah, Antifa actually showed up to the rally. Let me see if this will play. I don't know if it will or not.
Let's watch this protester in the purple hair. Oh, they're taking him down. There they go. They got him down. Look at them all. There must be 10 cops on him. They got their tasers out. Wow. Let's check this on out. It says, we don't want you here. Coronavirus, white supremacy 45, meaning President Trump.
So yes, they're just out there making a mess of everything out there and seeing what we've got going on here. So yeah, that was great. And like I said, I got to give them credit for this, because it takes some brass ones to do that. I still think they're idiots, but it definitely takes some courage to go up and try and protest Sturgis during Sturgis. All right. One more here, and then we'll do something that restores my faith in humanity from Fox Business. And this is something, when I was on the Red and Ed show last week, I mentioned the fact that a tornado had ripped through just north of the town I live in. And the tornado sirens were going off when I went and had my business meeting right before we went live. I pointed that out, and this was actually a part of that particular storm. Iowa requests nearly $4 billion in disaster aid after derecho governor says state is hurting, from Travis Fedshun. A storm system that blasted Iowa last week with hurricane-force winds, which left at least 3 people dead in the state and devastated millions of acres of farmland, caused damage estimated at nearly $4 billion, according to officials. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds announced Sunday night that she's filing an expedited presidential major disaster declaration with the federal government seeking nearly $4 billion to rebuild and repair. From cities to farms, Iowans are hurting. Many still have challenges with food, shelter, and power, Reynolds said in a statement. Resilience is in our DNA, but we're going to need a strong and timely federal response to support the recovery efforts. Reynolds said that she had a conversation with President Trump and Vice President Pence in the past week, who both pledged to the full support of the federal government. With rapid approval, this declaration will provide a significant level of federal resources to support the state and local response, Reynolds said. While it is unconventional for a major disaster declaration request of this magnitude to be assembled and approved within a matter of days, it is essential that a request is expedited and approved as quickly as possible. The money Iowa is seeking from the federal government includes $3.78 billion in agricultural losses, $100 million for private utilities, $82 million for homes, and $45 million for public assistance. And, on paper, I am against federal aid, of course, but this is what they actually need the federal aid for. Iowa is fairly well managed as far as budget goes. And there are other states in the union that are completely mismanaging their budgets and have their hand out every single year. So there are a couple ways to look at this. I would think that private charity would probably do better for Iowa than the federal government, because the federal government sucks at everything, but I understand why they need to have their hand out as well at this point. So it's a mixed bag for me. It really is. And I do hope that some private charity does step up and help them so the federal government doesn't have to throw as much at them. So that is going to be it. Yeah. 8:10 to 8:13. With power outages. So that's what we're going to see off of this here. And yeah, nobody in the news covered this derecho up until a few days ago. And this was last Monday that it happened. They called it an inland hurricane, which I don't understand. I've never heard the term derecho for a storm. But yeah, I know that it drops tornadoes all across Wisconsin into Illinois. It temporarily shut down the protests in Chicago because tornado hit the west suburbs. And nobody heard about this other than the people that live in this area. So, good on whoever broke the news off of this, and we'll be paying attention to this as well and seeing if we can find some private charity that comes and helps out Iowa. And we will do a thing that restores my faith in humanity, and then we will get on out of here, and I will move on over to the Daily Ignoramus. So, from the Daily Wire, huge gun rights victory. Ninth Circuit strikes down California law banning gun magazines with over 10 bullets. From Hank Berrien. On Friday, in a decision that exhilarated gun rights supporters and shocked gun control activists, a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit of U.S. Courts of Appeals struck down California's ban on ammunition magazines with more than 10 bullets. The 2-1 decision in Duncan versus Becerra upheld the 2017 ruling of the U.S. District Judge Roger Benitez. Wow, I can talk. Who blocked the law that banned magazines holding more than 10 bullets from gun owners, as CBS San Francisco noted. The ruling explained the Ninth Circuit employs a two-pronged inquiry to determine whether firearm regulations violate the Second Amendment. 1, whether the law burdens conduct protected by the Second Amendment, and 2, if so, what level of scrutiny to apply to the regulation. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra's office responded to the ruling by saying, until further proceedings in the courts, the stay on the injunction issued by the district court remains in place. The AG remains committed to using every tool possible to defend California's gun safety laws and keep our communities safe. California Rifle and Pistol Association Attorney Chuck Michael celebrated the decision as a huge victory for gun owners and the right to choose to own a firearm to defend your family. The ruling affects Western states under the jurisdiction of the Ninth Circuit Court, but Michael pointed out the decision could influence the Supreme Court, asserting the Supreme Court seems inclined to do away with the complicated subjective tests that many courts have wrongly applied in Second Amendment cases in favor of clear, more objective, originalist approach that considers the text, history, and tradition of a law to determine what infringements might be tolerated. And first and foremost, I want to say welcome to the rest of the United States, to the state of California. As soon as that injunction is lifted by court order, you will be able to use your firearms rights to your fullest extent, and I congratulate you on this very well. The big thing, though, that goes along with this as well is the AG in California is planning on taking this to the Supreme Court, which means that we could actually get a ruling on this across the nation, and I bet you he's scared shitless about that right now. The fact that he might actually be able to lose this, and every state could have their ammunition magazine capacities restricted. And you should have more bullets in your magazine. You absolutely should. 100-round drum for a shotgun. 50 rounds in your AR. Extended magazines, banana clips. Anything you want, you should be able to have, because the criminals that come to take it from you, to take your stuff from you, whether they be private citizens or the government, aren't going to look over these bans. They're going to ignore those bans. You, the law-abiding citizen, are going to abide by the law. So the law needs to reflect the fact that you need to defend yourself. So, good on California. The Ninth Circuit approved this. And the fact that it was the Ninth Circuit, that is what restores my faith in humanity. The Ninth Circuit, the one that they judge shop for when they want to shut down the president for anything whatsoever, is the one that approved this. And that restores all faith that I have in humanity right there. Welcome to the United States, California, and enjoy your gun rights. And that's going to be it for the day here. So we will be back here later on tonight for the Red and Ed Show. We'll be talking about some of the things that we talked about today and numerous other things that we talked about throughout the week, including we'll probably be having an extended conversation about Kamala Harris. So come back over and check that out. That's going to be a great thing, because this is the news coming up here. And we'll be watching the DNC to see if anything else needs to be reported on as well as we go along here. Other than that, we will be back here tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.